Deep in the cosmos, the Zarin Empire, once the unchallenged colossus among galaxies, finds itself on the precipice of civil war. Following the assassination of Emperor Zarian, the empire is without a ruler, and the royal palace, a massive structure of dark steel and shimmering energy fields on the planet Zira, is rife with intrigue and power plays. Inside the grand strategy room, the atmosphere is thick with tension. Prince Darien, the emperor's nephew and a high-ranking military commander, convenes an urgent meeting. His sharp features are set in a grim expression as he addresses the room filled with Zarin nobility and military officials. "Gentlemen," Darien begins, his voice echoing off the walls, "the empire stands at a critical juncture. With the emperor gone, it is imperative that we stabilize the throne and quash any thoughts of rebellion." A murmur of agreement passes through the room. But there's an undercurrent of unease. Many present are more interested in their personal gain than the future of the empire. Just then, a side door opens, and Princess Alara, clad in her royal armor, steps into the room. Her presence commands immediate attention, her eyes scanning the assembly with a fierce determination. "Prince Darien, while your call for unity is commendable," Alara interjects, "we cannot ignore the underlying issues that plague our empire. We need a leader who understands not just the Zarin, but the changing dynamics of the galaxy." Darien's eyes narrow. "And what are you suggesting, Princess?" Alara steps forward, her voice steady. "I propose an alliance, an unconventional one. I plan to seek a partnership with a human." The room erupts in murmurs of disbelief. Humans, widely regarded as lesser beings by the Zarin, are considered an odd choice for an alliance, especially by royal standards. "Silence," Darien commands. He then turns to Alara, skepticism written all over his face. "You cannot be serious. Humans are primitive, their technology inferior. What possible use could they be to us in this delicate time?" Alara meets his gaze unflinchingly. "You underestimate them, Darien. They possess unique qualities that our own kind lacks. Their adaptability, their spirit, and their tactical ingenuity in warfare could be precisely what we need to navigate through this crisis." An older general, Vorek, known for his strategic mind, strokes his chin thoughtfully. "And who is this human you wish to bring into our midst?" Alara's response is swift. "James Kincaid, a former Special Forces operative from Earth with a record of surviving against overwhelming odds," Darien scoffs. "You wish to entrust the future of our empire to a single human warrior? This is madness, Alara." "Is it madness to seek strength where others see none?" Alara challenges. "Or is it madness to cling to old prejudices while the empire crumbles around us?" Before Darien can retort, another voice joins the fray. Commander Riken, a younger officer whose loyalty to Alara is well known, steps up. "I support the princess's plan. It's high time we think beyond our conventional tactics. What do we have to lose at this point?" Darien glares at Riken, then at the rest of the room, gauging the sentiment. Reluctantly, he realizes that not all are against Alara's idea. "Very well," he concedes. "We shall consider this plan. But Alara, the responsibility for this alliance rests squarely on your shoulders." "I accept that responsibility," Alara states firmly. As the meeting adjourns, Alara exchanges a brief nod with Riken, appreciative of his support. The two exit the room together, their steps echoing in the silent hall. "We need to move quickly," Alara says. "Time is not on our side." "I'll make the arrangements for Kincaid's retrieval," Riken replies, his tone resolute. Meanwhile, far from the political machinations of the Zarin Empire, James Kincaid spends his day in the quiet solitude of Earth's wilderness, unaware that his life is about to intersect with interstellar politics. His skills, honed in the theaters of Earth's wars, are about to be tested on a galactic scale. As the sun sets on Earth, casting long shadows over the land, a stealth craft from the Zarin Empire makes its way toward the planet. Its mission is clear: retrieve James Kincaid and bring him into a conflict that spans the stars. The fate of an empire may well rest in the hands of a man who has never looked to the heavens and seen anything but the cold light of distant stars. The Zarin stealth craft descended upon Earth with the silence of falling snow, its presence cloaked by advanced technology. Inside, James Kincaid was deep in thought, attempting to make sense of the whirlwind events that had torn him from his peaceful retirement. As he sat in the alien vessel, he scrutinized Princess Ilara, who seemed to be the architect of his current predicament. Ilara watched him with an expression that mingled respect with a touch of urgency. "I understand this is difficult for you, James," she began, her voice calm. "Being plucked from your world without warning is not how I wanted to begin this partnership." James looked away from the window, where Earth was now just a receding dot. "Partnership is a strong word for what feels more like a kidnapping," he retorted, his tone a mixture of anger and bewilderment. Ilara nodded, acknowledging his feelings. "I won't pretend you had a choice in the initial stages, but what comes next is entirely up to you. Help me stabilize my empire, and I promise not only to return you safely, but also to ensure that Earth remains untouched by Zarin conflicts." The promise of Earth's safety made James pause. His life had always been about protecting others, and the thought of his home planet at risk stirred a protective instinct in him. "Tell me more about this crisis of yours. Why come to me?" Ilara turned to face him fully, her eyes intense. "The Zarin Empire is vast, but it's riddled with corruption and power struggles. My father's death has left a vacuum that several factions wish to exploit. Without a strong successor, the empire will crumble into civil war." "And you believe I can help prevent that?" James asked skeptically. "Not alone," she admitted. "But with your help I plan to introduce new strategies that incorporate human resilience and ingenuity. You see, the Zarin might be powerful, but they are rigid in their ways, often to their detriment." James mulled over her words, seeing the logic in them despite the bizarre circumstances. "So, you need a fresh perspective." "Exactly," Ilara said with a slight smile, "and perhaps more than that." Before James could inquire further, the craft began to shudder slightly, signaling their approach to another world. "We are arriving at my home planet, Zira. This is where you will see the reality of my empire's plight." As the craft landed, James followed Ilara out into a sprawling metropolis that stretched as far as the eye could see. The architecture was a blend of towering spires and imposing fortresses, each structure a testament to Zarin power. Yet, the tension in the air was palpable, with heavily armed guards at every corner and citizens casting anxious glances. "This is your empire?" James asked, taking in the sight of a society on edge. "It is," Ilara replied solemnly, "and it's tearing itself apart." They were met by Commander Riken, who greeted Ilara with a respectful nod. "Princess, preparations have been made for your council meeting." "Thank you, Riken," Ilara said, then turned to James. "I must attend to some urgent matters. Riken will show you to your quarters. We'll speak more soon." As Riken led James through the corridors of the royal palace, James observed the interactions between the Zarin. The soldiers seemed loyal, but there was an undercurrent of fear and suspicion among them. "Your princess seems to be walking a tightrope," James commented as they walked. Riken glanced at him, a grimace crossing his face. "She is, and she's doing it without the support she deserves. Many see her as too young, too radical." "Or perhaps just the right amount of radical," James suggested, thinking of Ilara's plan to integrate human strategies into their military. Riken smiled wryly. "Perhaps. If she can win the support of key figures within the empire, she might just pull this off." James nodded, feeling the weight of the task ahead. As he settled into his new quarters, he knew he had a decision to make. He could try to find a way back to Earth and forget he ever heard of the Zarin Empire, or he could stay and help Ilara save her people, and possibly his own. James Kincaid woke to the unfamiliar hum of alien technology. His first morning on Zira was accompanied by a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. The previous day's revelations weighed heavily on him, forcing him to reconsider his initial reluctance. He now understood that his involvement in Zarin affairs wasn't just about assisting Ilara. It was about safeguarding Earth from potential fallout. As he prepared for the day, his resolve solidified. He needed to learn more about the Empire and its factions to make informed decisions. Meanwhile, Princess Ilara was in her private war room, discussing strategy with her closest advisors, including Commander Riken. They were interrupted by an urgent communication from one of Alara's spies. "Princess, I have troubling news," the spy's voice crackled over the communicator. "Prince Kale is amassing a force at the border of the Viridian sector. He seems to be preparing for a move against the capital." Ilara's face hardened with determination. "Thank you, Talon. Keep an eye on his movements. We cannot let Kale disrupt our plans." After the communication ended, Ilara turned to her advisors. "We need to act fast. Riken, I want you to escort James to the training grounds. He needs to understand our military capabilities." Riken nodded, finding James in his quarters. "It's time to see what you're up against and what you can teach us," Riken said, leading the way to the military complex. As they walked, Riken explained the current military situation. "Our forces are strong but disorganized. Your experience could help streamline our tactics." James nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. Upon reaching the training grounds, he observed Zarin soldiers engaged in combat drills. Their techniques were advanced, but James noticed gaps in their coordination and flexibility, gaps that human guerrilla tactics could exploit. "Let's shake things up a bit," James suggested, stepping forward to demonstrate a few maneuvers. The soldiers watched, initially skeptical but soon intrigued as James showcased close-quarters combat techniques and improvised battlefield tactics that prioritized mobility and surprise, strategies that were new to the Zarin. Ilara, having joined to observe, was impressed. "Excellent. Let's integrate these into our training immediately." The day's work forged a new respect between James and the Zarin soldiers. However, the relative calm was shattered by another report from Talon. The spy alerted them that Kale had begun moving his forces toward the capital. "We have to prepare for an immediate defense," Ilara stated, her expression grim. "James, I need you on the front lines. Can you lead a contingent of our forces?" James, feeling the weight of responsibility, nodded. "I'll do what I can." As they mobilized, Ilara briefed her troops. "This battle is not just for our survival, but for the future of our empire. We fight together." The troops rallied behind her, with James taking command of a unit. They deployed to a strategic pass that led to the capital, setting up defenses and preparing for Kale's forces. The wait wasn't long. Kale's army advanced with overwhelming force, confident and aggressive. But they were met with fierce resistance. James implemented guerrilla tactics disrupting the enemy's advance. Each skirmish showcased the effectiveness of blending Zarin's strength with human cunning, slowly turning the tide. Amidst the chaos of battle, Ilara fought alongside her troops, her presence bolstering their morale. James, seeing her in combat, realized her commitment ran deeper than duty. She fought for her people's right to a better future. As night fell, the battle intensified. Kale's forces, frustrated by their inability to break through, launched a desperate final assault. James and Ilara coordinated a counterattack that would either repel the invaders or leave the capital vulnerable. The battle raged under the light of Zira's twin moons. Explosions lit the night, and the ground shook with the force of combat. James, leading a risky flanking maneuver, found himself face to face with enemy combatants. With each move, he adapted Zarin techniques, enhancing them with his experience. Finally, as dawn approached, Kale's forces, exhausted and demoralized, began to retreat. The defense had held, thanks to the new strategies implemented by James and the unyielding spirit of Ilara and her troops. Breathing heavily, James looked over the battlefield, the weight of victory heavy on his shoulders. Ilara approached him, her armor marked by the fight. "We've won this battle, but the war is far from over," she said, her eyes reflecting the fires of combat. James nodded, his respect for the princess deepening. "Then we'll be ready, whatever it takes." As they surveyed the weary but victorious soldiers, it was clear that a new chapter in the Zarin Empire's history was being written, one that might just include a human at the heart of its rebirth. After their hard-fought victory, James and Ilara returned to the capital, their spirits buoyed by the success of their combined tactics on the battlefield. Yet, even as they celebrated their strategic win, whispers of dissent and betrayal began to echo through the corridors of the royal palace. Inside her council room, Ilara convened an emergency meeting with her top advisors and military leaders, including James, to discuss the next steps in consolidating power and securing the empire. "We must be vigilant," Ilara warned her council. "Kale's defeat will only make him more desperate and dangerous." James leaned forward, his expression serious. "We need to strengthen our defenses and keep a close watch on any internal threats. Your enemy isn't just the one outside your gates." As the meeting unfolded, Riken entered the room hurriedly, his face tense with urgency. "Princess, we've intercepted a communication. It's from within the palace. Someone is plotting to open the gates for Kale's forces." The room erupted in murmurs of shock and anger. Ilara's face hardened, a cold fury settling in her eyes. "Find the traitors. Lock down the palace. No one enters or leaves without my permission." James and Riken coordinated the palace security, implementing strict checks at all access points, while Ilara's loyalists scoured the communications network for any further signs of treachery. The tension within the palace walls thickened, a stark contrast to the earlier celebrations. In the midst of the turmoil, James took a moment to reflect on the situation in his newly assigned quarters. The realization that the battle for the throne was far from over weighed heavily on him. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. It was Ilara, looking more vulnerable than he had ever seen her. "James, I need to know I can trust you," she said quietly as she stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "You can trust me," James replied, his voice firm. "I'm with you in this fight, Ilara. What's got you worried?" "It's not just the traitors," Ilara confided. "It's what they represent. There are those within my own ranks who would see me fall because they cannot see beyond their prejudice against integrating human strategies into our methods. They see you as a threat to the old ways." James stood and walked over to her, his demeanor reassuring. "Then we'll prove them wrong. Together." Ilara nodded, steeling herself with his support. "Tomorrow, we'll expose the conspirators and shore up our position. I can't do this without you, James." The next morning, the palace was a fortress on high alert. James and Riken led a team of loyal guards in a silent sweep of the compound. Their efforts paid off when they caught a group of high-ranking officers attempting to disable the palace's security network. Brought before Ilara, the officers were defiant. "This empire needs true Zarin leadership, not some human puppeteer," one spat venomously. Ilara's response was icy calm. "This empire needs unity and strength, qualities you lack. Your betrayal is not just against me, but against all Zarin." As the traitors were led away, James felt a slight shift in the palace dynamics. Ilara's decisive action against the conspirators won her grudging respect from some of her fiercest critics. However, the betrayal had revealed the depth of the challenges she faced, not just from Kale, but from within her own ranks. "We need to be more careful," James told Ilara, as they reviewed security protocols later that day. "Your enemies are closer than we thought." "I know," Ilara agreed, her gaze determined. "But this won't end me. If anything, it strengthens my resolve. With you by my side, we'll rebuild this empire on new terms." As they planned their next moves, James couldn't help but admire Ilara's courage and vision. He knew that their path would be fraught with danger, but he also knew that together they could forge a future that would redefine the Zarin Empire. The stakes were immense, not just for Ilara's rule, but for the peace and stability of the galaxy. And at the heart of it all was their burgeoning partnership, a testament to the potential of unity across species. In the days that followed the exposure of the conspirators within the palace, the atmosphere among the Zarin elite began to shift. The decisive action taken by Princess Ilara, supported by James Kincaid's strategies, slowly started to cement her position as a capable leader. However, the challenge to her authority was far from over. Prince Kale, sensing an opportunity amidst the turmoil, issued a formal challenge to Ilara's claim to the throne. According to ancient Zarin tradition, such a challenge could be settled in one of two ways: a political debate before the High Council, or a duel to prove one's worthiness. Kale, confident in his martial prowess and popularity among the traditionalist factions, chose the latter. Ilara, understanding the gravity of the situation, met with her inner circle, including James, to deliberate her response. The meeting took place in the dimly lit war room, where the tension was palpable. Challenging you to a duel is a calculated move by Kale, James observed. He expects you to decline or fail, undermining your strength in either scenario. Elara nodded, her expression resolute. Declining is not an option. I must accept, but I'll need your help, James. Riken interjected. The risk is substantial. If you lose, Kale will take the throne. We need to prepare you, not just physically but strategically. James, your experience could be pivotal here. Let's train like the battle depends on it, James replied, his determination matching Elara's. The days leading up to the duel were intense, with James coaching Elara not only in combat, but also in the psychological warfare that would play a crucial role in her victory. The day of the duel arrived swiftly, casting a pall over the capital. The arena, a massive structure located at the heart of the palace, was filled with citizens and nobles alike, all eager to witness the outcome that would shape the future of their empire. As Elara stepped into the arena, armored and poised, the crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheered, while others murmured doubts about her capabilities. Across from her, Prince Kale entered with a confident swagger, his armor glinting under the artificial lights. The duel commenced with the sounding of the ancient Zarin gong. Elara and Kale circled each other warily, each assessing the other's strengths and weaknesses. Kale made the first move, aggressive and powerful, but Elara parried with the techniques James had taught her, focused and calm. James watched from the sidelines, his heart pounding with each clash of their weapons. He knew that Elara's ability to adapt human unpredictability to her fighting style was her best chance against Kale's brute strength. The battle raged on, with both combatants trading blows that echoed through the arena. Elara's strategy was to wear Kale down, using her agility to evade his powerful strikes and counterattacking when he least expected it. The crowd began to respond to her display of skill and determination, their cheers growing louder with each successful maneuver. As the duel drew on, Kale began to show signs of frustration. His attacks became more desperate, providing Elara with opportunities to exploit. Seizing a moment, she executed a complex maneuver James had shown her, catching Kale off guard and knocking him to the ground. The arena fell silent as Elara pointed her weapon at Kale, her victory clear. But rather than deliver the final blow, she offered him mercy. The Empire needs every one of its children, she proclaimed, her voice resonant. I seek not to kill, but to lead. This act of mercy was met with roaring approval from the crowd, many of whom had expected a traditional, brutal end. Kale, humiliated but alive, was helped from the arena, his claim to the throne irrevocably weakened. After the duel, Elara's respect among the Zarin grew exponentially. Her combination of strength, strategy, and compassion marked a new era for the Empire. James, watching her accept the adulation of the crowd, felt a profound respect for her not just as a leader, but as a visionary capable of changing the very fabric of Zarin society. Together they walked back to the palace, their path illuminated by the lights of the city and the newfound hope of the Zarin people. Elara turned to James, gratitude evident in her eyes. Today we won more than just a duel. We won the chance to rebuild. James nodded, his commitment to Elara and her cause stronger than ever. Let's make sure this victory counts for something. As they prepared for the challenges ahead, both knew that the road to reforming the Empire was just beginning. But with each other's support, the possibilities were limitless. After the duel's decisive outcome, where Princess Elara demonstrated both martial prowess and magnanimity, the tides of public opinion within the Zarin Empire began to shift palpably in her favor. This victory, however, was not merely a triumph over Prince Kale. It was an affirmation of Elara's new approach to leadership, an approach that melded Zarin's strength with human ingenuity, as personified by James Kincaid. In the aftermath, as the buzz from the arena duel still echoed through the corridors of power, Elara set her sights on consolidating her rule. She knew that while the public spectacle had weakened Kale's position, it had not eradicated the underlying factionalism that threatened the Empire's stability. Inside the strategic war room, Elara, flanked by James and her loyal advisor Riken, addressed her inner circle. "We must capitalize on this momentum," she declared, her voice resonant with authority. "It is time to implement reforms that will fortify the empire against division and external threats." James, who had been closely studying Zarin military and political structures, suggested, "We should start with the military. Integrating human tactical training can enhance our forces' effectiveness, making them more adaptable and responsive." Alara nodded in agreement. "Make it so. Commander Riken, coordinate with James to begin these trainings immediately. We also need to address the civilian sectors. Engagement and transparency are crucial to gaining their trust and quelling any lingering dissent." As the plans were set in motion, Alara focused on another critical aspect of her rule: her bond with the throne of Zarin. The throne, an ancient artifact of immense power, was not just a symbol of authority, but a source of it. Traditionally, it was believed that only a pure-blooded Zarin could bond with the throne, drawing upon its energy to govern with wisdom and strength. Curious about this tradition and the potential it held, James accompanied Alara to the throne room, a vast chamber at the heart of the palace. The room was dominated by the throne itself, an imposing seat carved from an unknown shimmering mineral that pulsed with a soft inner light. "According to legend, the throne will accept a ruler who is both strong and righteous," Alara explained, her gaze fixed on the enigmatic artifact. "It's more than tradition. It's believed to assess the worthiness of those who seek to rule." James watched as Alara approached the throne, her expression a mixture of determination and reverence. As she sat down, the room filled with a brilliant light, and the air thrummed with power. To the astonishment of all present, the throne responded to Alara, its glow intensifying, a sign that it had accepted her as the rightful empress. But then, unexpectedly, the throne's light flickered, its energy pulsing erratically. Alara looked back at James, her brow furrowed. "It has never reacted this way before," she murmured. James stepped closer, his mind racing with possibilities. "Maybe it's responding to the changes you're implementing. Or perhaps," he paused, considering his next words carefully, "it's sensing the potential for a new kind of leadership. Maybe your bond with the throne can evolve, just like the empire." Encouraged by James's words, Alara focused her will, seeking to stabilize the connection. Slowly, the throne's energy calmed, synchronizing with her own. As she rose, it was clear that Alara had not only claimed the throne, but had also begun to redefine what it could represent. In the weeks that followed, the empire witnessed a series of reforms that gradually transformed its governance. The military, under James's guidance, became a more versatile and dynamic force. Civil initiatives aimed at improving transparency and public welfare began to repair the fractured trust between the populace and the imperial authority. Through it all, James remained by Alara's side, not just as an advisor but as a partner in leadership. Their combined strength, her visionary rule augmented by his tactical acumen, ushered in a new era for the Zarin Empire. One evening, as they stood overlooking the capital from a palace balcony, Alara turned to James, her eyes reflecting the starlit sky. "What we've started here, it's more than I hoped for. The empire is becoming a place of hope, a beacon for what can be achieved when different worlds unite." James nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's the beginning of something greater. And there's no one I'd rather be doing this with." As the reforms initiated by Princess Alara and James Kincaid began to take root across the Zarin Empire, a new sense of stability and progress enveloped the once troubled realm. However, not all were content with the changes sweeping through the corridors of power. Deep-seated resentment brewed among certain factions of the Zarin nobility and military, who viewed Alara's alliance with a human as a betrayal of their heritage. The seeds of rebellion were sown quietly, coalescing into a formidable coalition led by a disgruntled general, Zarvok, who had once been a staunch supporter of Prince Kale. Zarvok, feeling marginalized by the new order, rallied like-minded Zarin under a banner of returning to the old ways that emphasized Zarin supremacy and traditional values. In a secure location far from the capital, Zarvok convened a clandestine meeting with his co-conspirators. "The time has come to reclaim our empire from this human-tainted rule," he proclaimed, his voice echoing in the dimly lit chamber. "Ilara has weakened our proud heritage by bending to human strategies and forsaking our customs. We must act now to restore our rightful dominion." Back in the capital, Ilara and James continued their work, unaware of the brewing storm. Their focus was on a Grand Council meeting scheduled to discuss further expansions of the integration programs. However, their plans were abruptly disrupted by an urgent security briefing. Commander Riken burst into the council room, his expression grim. "Your Highness, we've intercepted communications indicating a large-scale mobilization of forces loyal to General Zarvok. They are preparing to march on the capital." Ilara's eyes narrowed, a mix of anger and resolve setting in. "Prepare our defenses. We will not let this rebellion undo all that we have achieved." James stood by her side, his demeanor calm yet alert. "We need to handle this carefully. Zarvok is playing on the fears of the traditionalists. We must show them that our way strengthens the empire, not weakens it." The rebellion moved swiftly, launching a series of strikes against key military outposts to disrupt communications and supply lines. The capital was soon under threat, with rebel forces advancing with alarming speed. Ilara and James coordinated the Empire's response from the war room, deploying troops trained in the new hybrid tactics. The ensuing battles were fierce, showcasing the effectiveness of the integrated military strategies. However, the rebels were relentless, driven by a fervent belief in their cause. As the conflict escalated, Ilara decided to address the Empire via a broadcast, seeking to sway the hearts and minds of her people. Standing before the cameras, her figure poised and regal, she spoke. "Fellow Zarin, we stand at a crossroads. The path I have chosen with the counsel of our ally, James Kincaid, is one of progress and unity. Do not let fear and prejudice dictate our future. Embrace the strength that diversity brings." Meanwhile, James led a critical operation on the ground, targeting a rebel stronghold that served as Zarvok's command center. The operation was risky, requiring stealth and precision. In the heat of the assault, James's leadership shone through, his strategies and directives turning the tide in a crucial confrontation. The battle for the stronghold was intense, with both sides suffering heavy losses. However, the tide turned when James and his team managed to capture General Zarvok, bringing him and several of his top lieutenants into custody. With their leader captured, the morale among the rebels faltered. Many surrendered, while others retreated, their resolve broken. The rebellion was quelled, but the scars it left were deep and visible. In the aftermath, Ilara and James faced the daunting task of rebuilding trust and healing the divisions that had led to the conflict. They worked tirelessly, promoting reconciliation and reform, emphasizing inclusivity and the benefits it brought to all citizens of the empire. As they stood together in the war-torn capital, surveying the rebuilding efforts, James turned to Ilara. "This was a hard-won victory, but the real work starts now. We need to ensure that no one feels left behind in this new empire we are building." Ilara nodded, her determination unwavering. "We will build it together, James. With each challenge, we grow stronger, and so does our resolve to create an empire that truly reflects the values we believe in." Their partnership, tested and tempered by the fires of rebellion, had emerged stronger, setting the foundation for a new era of prosperity and cooperation in the Zarin Empire. In the aftermath of the rebellion, the Zarin Empire found itself at a crucial juncture. While the insurrection had been quelled, the fractures it revealed within the empire were deep. Princess Ilara and James Kincaid stood at the heart of the rebuilding efforts. Their partnership, now not only a symbol of unity, but also a beacon for the transformative change sweeping across the star systems under their influence. With General Zarvok's rebellion crushed, Ilara turned her attention to the broader implications of their victory. The rebellion had exposed the vulnerability of an empire unwilling to evolve, and she knew that the path forward required more than just military might. It needed a vision that could unite the diverse cultures and species within the empire under a common banner. James worked closely with Ilara, using his insights into human resilience and adaptability to foster a sense of community and shared destiny among the Zarin forces. Together, they launched initiatives aimed at integrating various alien technologies and philosophies into the Empire's governance, ensuring that all voices were heard and valued. Meanwhile, the question of the throne's allegiance lingered. Though Ilara had successfully bonded with the ancient artifact, its occasional flickers of instability hinted at deeper currents of power, yet to be fully understood or controlled. James, observing these phenomena, suggested a bold move. Maybe the throne itself needs to evolve with the Empire, he posited during one of their strategy sessions. Ilara considered this, her mind racing with the implications. If the throne can truly reflect the diversity of our empire, perhaps it could become not just a source of power, but a symbol of our unity. The decision was made to hold a ceremony at the throne room, inviting representatives from every sector and species within the empire. The event was broadcast throughout the galaxy, signaling a new era of openness and inclusivity. As the day of the ceremony arrived, the air was charged with a palpable sense of anticipation. The throne room was filled with a colorful array of beings, each representing their cultures with pride. Ilara, dressed in a ceremonial robe that blended Zarin and human elements, approached the throne, her expression serene yet resolute. Beside her, James stood as a testament to the partnership that had brought them to this moment. As Ilara touched the throne, instead of the expected surge of power, there was a gentle pulse, like the heartbeat of the Empire itself. The throne's glow spread, enveloping Ilara, and then reaching out to the assembled crowd, touching each representative in a display of unity. It was a silent affirmation that the throne no longer served just a single ruler, but was a covenant between the leaders and the led. Moved by the ceremony, the representatives vowed to uphold the principles of unity and innovation that Ilara and James championed. The Empire, once rigid and hierarchical, began to transform into a federation of allied systems, each contributing to a collective prosperity. In the weeks that followed, Ilara and James traveled across the Empire, cementing alliances and fostering new initiatives that combined the best of Zarin and human innovation. Their travels were a testament to their commitment to not just rule, but to genuinely lead by example. One evening, standing on a balcony overlooking a newly constructed peace memorial on a once-disputed planet, James turned to Ilara. "Did you ever imagine we'd get this far?" he asked, his voice tinged with wonder. Ilara smiled, her eyes reflecting the stars above. "In truth, no, but I always hoped. And hope, as I've learned, can be a powerful thing, especially when shared." James nodded, his thoughts on the long road they had traveled together. "What comes next?" he asked. Ilara's gaze turned back to the horizon, where the setting sun met the curve of the planet. "We build, we grow, and we dream, and we do it together. There's no end to what we can achieve, no frontier we cannot explore, as long as we remain united." As they watched the sunset, the stars beginning to twinkle in the twilight, the peace they had fought so hard to achieve seemed not just a fleeting moment, but a lasting promise. The Zarin Empire, reborn through the fires of conflict and the forge of unity, looked forward to a future filled with endless possibilities, guided by a leader who had found her strength in the partnership of equals. This marked not an end, but a new beginning, a legacy of change, courage, and coexistence that would define the galaxy for generations to come.